Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be walking you guys through the Kabuki Strength Organ Power Bar. I'm going to start by comparing the specifications on the Kabuki Strength website to the barbell that I have in front of me today. After that, I'm going to give you guys my opinions on the finish, knurl quality, overall construction, and then I'm going to wrap it up with my final thoughts. So this is the Organ Power Bar. It is one of the more recent offerings from Kabuki Strength. It comes in at $299, but with code KL5 at checkout, you can get it marked down to $285. Now shipping will run you an additional maybe $80. That's going to depend on where you live, but I'll cover that a little bit later in my review. So the description on the Kabuki Strength website claims that this bar is built using state-of-the-art techniques with something that they are calling Kabuknurl or Kabuknurl. I'm not sure if the K is silent or not on that. Essentially, it is a fully raised pattern. It grips rather than tears the skin, meaning that it is grippy rather than being overly aggressive and sharp. It also has slight craters to each one of the raised knurl marks, increasing the total surface area and making the knurl a little bit more effective, at least from a theoretical standpoint. The Organ Power Bar is a bare steel bar. It doesn't come with coating options, but it does come with their raw coating. Their raw coating is essentially their Kabuki bar sauce applied at the factory, and RAW stands for Repairable, Anti-corrosion, Weatherguard technology. It has a proprietary blend. I did do another video where I coated my bare steel Duffalo bar with the Kabuki bar sauce, and that bar is still holding up pretty well. And that's important because in a garage gym like I have, I'm going to have temperature fluctuations, which are going to cause condensation issues, especially right now as we come out of the winter and into the spring and summer months. Specifications include a 28.5 millimeter diameter, a 86.5 inch total length, 190,000 PSI steel, and it has oil impregnated bushings, 2 of them on each sleeve. The Kabuknurl, or the Kabuknurl, I've really tried to say that word, I can't, is listed as slightly shallower than the 250,000 tensile strength power bar, so like the next gen power bar. Which I can attest to, so this does have just a little bit less aggression, a little bit less deep points than the Kabuki Power Bar, but it's still pretty good in its own right. Now, one of the projects that I am working on is a way that I can quantify knurl. Nothing irritates me more than other influencers on the internet that talk about their aggressive or all of the different weird rating systems that we've come up with to try to convey aggressiveness to our viewers. But until I have that, you're just going to have to rely on my word. The Kabuknurl, the Kabuknurl seems to be just a description of like a volcano type knurling. Again, with that crater type effect, it really seems like that's what it's getting at. I do speculate that one of the reasons that they made it a little bit less aggressive is because this bar is probably being marketed more to the more athlete-centric type of user. So think about like your team sports or someone that's training for an actual sport, and the sport itself isn't powerlifting, strongman, Olympic weightlifting. Now, as a general rule of thumb, I do find that this knurl is very effective as far as enhancing your grip, whether that's with or without chalk. It is also sharp enough that it provides a nice feedback loop. So as you go to pick up a bar as you're deadlifting, or as you go to rack it on your back, you will feel that knurl, and it does provide the feedback necessary to kind of complete that loop. I will nitpick though, and I will say that I did find a little bit of a double track knurl on this bar. It wasn't enough that it really turned me off. However, Kabuki is known to be a high quality or like a higher end barbell. And although this isn't priced as a higher end barbell, it is still something that is made in USA, and we've come to expect a high degree of quality control from Kabuki. So I would maybe like to see the quality control cleaned up just a little bit. Now, overall, the materials quality is good. This is made in USA from USA manufactured steel. As I stated prior, this is a bare steel bar that comes with the bar sauce pre-applied. That bare steel is really nice though, as you get a really good grip on the knurl, and the knurl isn't really interrupted by any sort of zinc or Cerakote or thick paint coating. You're basically feeling the knurl exactly as the company wanted it to be felt in bare steel. Just as a quick note though, if you do get this bar, you may want to consider your environment that you train in. So if you train in a basement gym or you train in a home gym where it's climate controlled, perhaps you would have a better time with the maintenance on this bar. If you're someone that trains and you're in a humid area or you're out in the garage and you do care about the bar not rusting, that may be a problem even with the bar sauce applied. On the Kabuki website, it does state that depending on the environment that you're in, bar sauce will need to be applied from anywhere from 3 months to maybe once a year. And that's all going to depend on use frequency, how clean you keep the bar, if you oil the bar, if you take care of it, brush out the chalk, etc. Now, personally, one of the things that I love about bare steel bars is that they do eventually take on a patina of their own. And although that is an oxidation, that patina can actually act to preserve the bar. However, it's a lot like anything. You have to take care of it in order to get to that point first. Otherwise, you do run the risk of this bar just turning into a giant ball of rust. That's not really fair. The sleeves on this bar, just like the shaft, are coated in that raw sauce, and that's because the sleeves are actually bare steel as well, and they offer 15.71 inches of loadable sleeve length. When we look at tolerances, a lot of times the quality of the bar can really be in the details. So if we look at the lateral shift, or what I mean by that is how far the sleeves actually move when they're completely assembled, I'm getting about 0.46 to 0.5 millimeters of movement in and out. The reason that that is important is because there has to be some play in order for the sleeves to still rotate freely, but if you have too much play, you can run into some issues as far as having a noisy bar, basically just having a sloppy bar, and I would say that this is definitely not sloppy. On my bar with the tightest tolerance in there, it's coming in at 0.38 millimeters, which is really not very much movement at all, but this one coming in at 0.46 to 0.5, depending on how I set up the test, is just a little bit more than that without being too obnoxious. This is also about middle of the pack because other barbells like the Texas Power Bar, from my experience testing those, do tend to shift a little bit more than that 0.5 millimeter spec. Now, when it comes to the length of the sleeves, 15.7 inches falls about in the middle of the pack. There's some that are longer, there's some that are shorter, but ultimately 15.7 inches is enough sleeve length to put a lot of weight on the bar, but also have enough sleeve length to load 315 to 365 pounds comfortably using crumb rubber bumper plates. The sleeves are a nice friction weld with a nice wide collar here, and everything is done really nicely so that the plates slide up nicely and sit against the collar face, nice and flush. There's nothing that's off center, nothing that's off kilter. Everything is nice and squared up and good to go as far as that's concerned. Now, the end caps are a little bit different than what we've come to expect from Kabuki Strength, at least at the beginning of the Oregon Power Bar production. The reason I say that is because, with an exception for the Transformer bar, all of the other barbells from Kabuki Strength come with that stamped end cap. It has a squat face on it. It tells you what the bar is, what the bar weighs, and this one is a little bit different. I did reach out to Kabuki to clarify. The etched Oregon Power Bar end caps are only for the introduction into the market. They are going to be doing stamped Oregon Power Bar end caps, and those will come later in production. I don't really have a timeline for that. This is a snap ring style construction, and that's through and through. So you take out the outer snap ring and you remove the plate that shows which bar that you have, the end cap that shows you which bar that you have. Once you do that, there's a couple spacers that are really nice additions because it reduces rattling to a small degree within that sleeve space. When you remove those, and I just use a magnet when I do these, it's a really easy way to get them out. You find that you have your inner snap ring. When you take that inner snap ring off, you can push the sleeve back towards the middle of the bar. You can take off your spacers and your half moon, which actually acts as the majority of the retention for the sleeve, and then the sleeve comes right off. Now on the inside of the sleeves, I have found oxidation in the past on other bars. This bar being a bare steel bar, I thought there may be a chance that there'd be some oxidation in there. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that the raw coating actually extends across the entire shaft, meaning that it was probably applied before the barbell was assembled. Inside of the shaft, everything was nice and clean. There were no shavings. The barbell itself was in perfect condition going through there. As I mentioned earlier, each sleeve has 2 oil-impregnated bushings that act to give the bar its spin that is necessary to be a powerlifting bar, but not so much spin that it acts like an Olympic lifting bar. So that is the sleeve and the shaft construction. The next thing I really want to talk about is the whip. Now this is a 28.5mm bar, which leads me to suspect that it may have more whip than other 29mm power bars. So what I did is I went into my barbell inventory and I pulled out my Iron Skull power bar, which is a made in USA bar that is offered from Bare Steel Equipment. The reason that I chose that bar is because it is also a 28.5mm shaft. It is a power bar with similar specs. I also compared it to the Primal Armor, which is a 29mm Denali power bar. I also compared it to the Kabuki 250,000 power bar. I also compared it to the Steel Reaper deadlift bar. Now I did post the footage from that one to my Instagram, mostly because I was entertained by myself, but I was really satisfied to see how many people were concerned for my safety. Don't worry everybody, I'm fine. The idea behind that setup was basically to compare the amount of flex in the shaft of a barbell, which would be of course dependent on the length of the bar, length of the sleeve, thickness of the collars, diameter, all of that good stuff. So after I loaded up the bar with like 9 plates on the one side in a landmine, what I did is I measured the deflection to parallel at the knurl mark closest to the load. The results were actually kind of surprising. I got a really good repeatable test. I tested all the barbells twice. And what I did is I went through all of my bars that I was going to test, and then I started back over and went through all of them again. So yes, that one video that you saw on Instagram, I did that like 10 times. Now the Oregon Power Bar flexed 33mm off of level. Keep in mind that the bars start off level, it flexed 33mm down, measured from this point. If we were to compare that to the Iron Skull power bar, which flexed 33mm as well, what we see is that the 28.5mm bars seem to have a similar flexion based on similar load. The 250,000 power bar from Kabuki Strength only flexed 28mm, which is of course a lot less, meaning that it's probably a little bit of a stiffer bar. And then of course the Steel Reaper deadlift bar flexed 60mm, which is more than twice that amount, which is appropriate based on the fact that it's a deadlift bar. So I did all that and I said all those words basically to tell you that this 28.5mm bar whips a little bit more than a 29mm power bar, but also whips less than that of a deadlift bar. It also whips appropriately compared to other 28.5mm bars. Something of note as well, like I said, this was tests that I did twice. Both times that I did this test, all the bars were within 1/2 of a millimeter to spec, which is probably within the span of operator error. This was also a very uncontrolled test. It's non-scientific based. However, just like I'm trying to figure out knurl for you guys, I'm also trying to figure out other metrics to give you that are a little bit more consistent than just it feels pretty stiff. This being a power bar, I did test it for most of my training. A power bar is what I tend to prefer for my strongman and powerlifting training anyways, and it performed as expected for all of the movements. The center knurl is about 6 inches long, which is nice and wide. It gives you enough space that you get purchase on your back without being so wide that when you go to deadlift, it hits you in the shins. As stated earlier, the knurl is grippy, but not overly aggressive. So I'm sorry to all those masochists out there if you're someone that basically just likes to grab the nastiest bar you've ever felt. This probably isn't the one for you, but if you're looking for just a nice barbell, maybe something where you're transitioning from a commercial gym, which has basically a painted on knurl to something that's a little bit more aggressive, this might be a really good in-between option. Also, for athletes that are looking to do explosive movements, it's forgiving enough that when you push really hard, you don't necessarily get those tears and those rips that we've come to expect from some of the more aggressive barbells out there. As I also talked about, it provides a really good feedback loop. It has really good consistent feeling, and with an exception for the one point of double track knurl, is pretty well done throughout. The 32-inch powerlifting marks are a little bit different. They are a little bit wider than most power bars out there. I will admit that at first that kind of threw me off as far as why is this so wide? I don't know if it's a cost savings measures, but when I reached out to Kabuki, they essentially said that it was to basically be within spec, to encompass like all of the difference, so like 32 1/8 all the way to 32 1/4. I don't know how I really feel about that response, but what I can tell you that in use, I do like it, because one of the things I appreciate about other barbells on the market is the ability to find that knurl mark without actually having to look at the bar. With this knurl mark being a little bit wider, it makes it really easy to find the knurl mark so that you don't have to focus on staring at your hands during hand placement. Also, with it being a raised but not quite really deep knurl, it takes chalk nicely, and it also cleans out really nicely. It doesn't take too much to get the chalk back out of this bar once you've used it. Now, I did a lot of different movements with this, squats, deadlifts. I did a lot of landmine movements with it. The one thing I didn't do with it is I didn't do any clean and jerks, and that's just because I've learned my lesson the hard way as far as a center knurl, especially one that isn't passive on a clean and jerk. I'm just sick of tearing up my chest, and I'm also sick of basically sanding off the tip of my nose. Now, the price of this bar is going to be a little bit of an interesting discussion. So coming in at $299, it's clearly something that Kabuki's putting out there to try to capture that middle range tier of quality barbells. With my 5% discount code being $284, it really seems like a good steal, and it stacks up nicely compared to the other bars on the market. However, where I get put off is the $80 shipping price. So that $80 shipping price is really what brings this thing right back up to being a lot more expensive than I think it needs to be. So the total shipping cost to me is $364, and if we compare that to other 28.5mm like the Texas Power Bar, what you basically get is that a similar Texas Power Bar in the 28.5mm selection comes out to about $314. If we compare it to the Iron Skull, the Iron Skull is going to come out to $350, so it's about a $14 jump from the Iron Skull all the way up to the Kabuki. Now, all three of those are made in USA 28.5mm barbells, which is why I chose to compare it to those bars. It's very grabby, and again, it's an all-rounder type of bar. This is made for athletes. It's very grabby and not very aggressive. But is it worth that small relative upcharge? Well, really, that's going to be up to you. I personally have been using this thing for about 6 weeks. I enjoy using it. This morning, for instance, when I came out to squat, I knew I was going to be recording this video, but I still chose to grab this barbell over the other ones, and that's because I just kind of like using it. I'm also excited to have another bare steel style barbell in the gym because, like I said earlier, I enjoy the patina that comes with bare steel, and for me, taking care of barbells is kind of therapeutic, and I enjoy doing it. So now it's time for my final thoughts. So today I dove into the Oregon Power Bar from Kabuki Strength. It's a piece that caught my attention both for its spec and its performance, priced at $299 with a slight discount and an additional $80 for shipping. This bar boasts innovative Kabuknurl technology designed for a grip that's effective without being harsh. I was impressed by its quality, the proprietary raw bar soft finish, coating for durability, and its suitability for a broad range of athletes, not just hardcore powerlifters. Despite a minor discrepancy with the double track knurl and the typical noise being about equal to most other barbells out there, I found that it performed really well across various lifts like squats, bench, deadlift, and it did really well. When comparing the cost and shipping to its competitors, it is a little bit higher, but the unique knurling and overall quality might make it worth it to you, but ultimately that depends on you. Personally, I found a lot to love about this bar, especially looking forward to seeing its patina develop over time, and it's a valued addition to my gym. So that's been my review of the Organ Power Bar from Kabuki Strength. Appreciate each and every single one of you guys that watch these videos every week. And remember, when it comes to your gym and your bars, you should always keep it better awesome and, of course, badass. I'll see you next time.